Hi, this is Jeff Curto, and welcome to episode number 18 of Camera Position, a podcast about the creative side of photography. Well, I'm hoping that the visual image that I'm including in this episode of Camera Position in the enhanced podcast and then also on the cameraposition.com blog site is I'm hoping it's the ugliest, dullest photograph that you'll see in Camera Position, but it has a purpose, and its purpose was prompted by a comment posted on the blog by Don Bricker last during the last podcast. And Don writes, "Thanks for another great podcast." Thank you, Don. "And I was curious about your workflow before the picture is shot. It would appear to me that Cartier-Bresson scouts out his shots and waits for the confluence of subjects for his decisive moment. Do you scout out shooting locations without your camera, looking for possible subjects and lighting, or do you keep your camera with you and when you see a shot, set up and take it? How does your style, with a large format, differ from Bresson's, who used a 35 millimeter?" What a great question. And it prompted me to get out this object, which I don't even know what I call it, and I can give you a little history of where I came by it. This is an object that is I guess I call it a viewing card or a viewing frame, and I have long used it. I thought about making a nicer, newer one for inclusion here in my photograph for of this thing for camera position, but golly, I just decided to let you see the warts and all kind of thing that I carry around in my camera bag. And what this thing is an 8 by 10 inch rectangle of cardboard with a 4 by 5 inch sized rectangle cut out of the center of it. And as you can see, it's kind of held together with tape. And I'll talk about the string that's hanging off of it here in a second. And while it's not, this podcast really isn't going to talk specifically about an individual photograph, I think that this is one of the most indispensable pieces of equipment that I have in my camera bag, and certainly indispensable for a large format photographer. And I think it also has applicability to small format photographers as well. Um, the first one of these that I got was given to me by my graduate school instructor, a guy named Neil Rappaport, one of the greatest photographers I've ever known. Unfortunately, now no longer with us. Neil Rappaport was a on the faculty at Bennington College in Vermont, where I received my Master of Fine Arts degree, and he gave me one, and he also included this idea of the string on the card. And I also got one when I did an Ansel Adams workshop in the summer of 1983. Ansel handed these out as part of the workshop, which sort of, I guess, lends a little bit of credence to it, perhaps. But in any case, what this object does is it allows us to, without having to look through the camera's viewfinder, without sort of putting that barricade between us and the subject, it allows us to move around to pick out subject matter in our surrounding environment, vertical, horizontal, tilted, however it is that you feel like you need to see it, and be able to make a number of quick mental snapshots, as it were, without having to raise the camera to your eye, and in my case, with a large format camera, without having to take the camera out of the camera case, which is a fairly significant enterprise if you're a large format photographer or you've used one at some point or seen someone use one. You know that it is a rather arduous kind of a situation of setting up the camera and getting it ready to make a photograph. So I carry this thing around in my camera bag, and it's a pretty easy, and I carry it in like in an outside pocket, so it's easy to get at. And then use this object to frame subjects and discover whether or not there's a photograph there and whether there's something that I want to spend some time looking at in a more serious way. I can bend my knees real fast and get down low. I can stand on tiptoes or climb up on something and get up high. I can move around quite easily. And that then brings us to the string, which is again an invention that Neil Rappaport gave me back in the 1980s, and one that I have used ever since. The string is tied, as you can sort of see, to the center of this cardboard, or near the center of the window opening in this thing. And the string has knots tied in it, and the knots are tied at a corresponding number of millimeters to the millimeters of the lenses that I have with me. So I have a 90 millimeter knot and a 120 millimeter knot and a 210 millimeter knot and a 450 millimeter knot tied in my string. And boy, I look, I'm sure, just like a sight out there making photographs and using this object. But if you take that knot and stick it on the bridge of your nose, right between your eyes, you will have an approximation of the focal length of lens that you're going to put on the camera. So with this object, I can kind of scout out what it is that I'm going to make a photograph of. I can figure out where I'm going to stand, something that as if you've been listening along to these podcasts, something that I consider to be the most critical thing for any photographer to do, and to figure out where to stand. And with this, then I can also figure out, well, okay, if I'm going to stand at this place and figure out the arrangement of the subject using this card, I can also determine what the optimum focal length of lens, given the inventory of lenses that I have along with me, will be. So here is an absolutely arcane, cheap, cheap piece of equipment that, in fact, I think of as being as important as my camera, as important as my light meter, as important as the film that I'm shooting in the camera, is this dumb little piece of cardboard. And just so that you kind of can think of this in terms of applying it to the photography that you might do, this object, I have made them for 35 millimeter. You take a similar size piece of cardboard. Actually, you don't even need that big a piece, maybe a 5 by 7 inch size piece of cardboard, and cut out a 35 millimeter sized frame in there. I have one that is 2¼ inches square to use with my Hasselblad camera. So the idea of being able to figure out where to stand before I take the camera out of the bag, before I raise the camera to my eye, and even, go ahead and just try this. If you just, quickly cut out with a blade, even if you don't get it exactly right in terms of the dimension, try it and see how much easier it is to frame a photograph using this device without having to intervene with a camera. And I think you'll find that not only will this be a useful device for making photographs, but it's also a useful device for sort of scouting out other types of images that you might want to take. Keep one on the seat next to you in the car, and don't use it while you're driving, please. But when you're stopped at a stoplight or stopped by a train or something, use this thing and try and make some compositions out of the areas you see around you. So thanks, Don, for writing and asking the question in a comment about the last podcast, and it prompted me to kind of talk about a little bit the idea of the mechanics of this enterprise of making photographs. So thanks again for listening. Thanks for making comments, and I'll be back with another of the more traditional camera position podcasts coming up here, hopefully within the next couple of days. But I did want to take this opportunity to tell you about this dumb little piece of cardboard that I think is an indispensable piece of camera equipment. So go make one and go make some photographs. Thanks again for listening.